Recording.
Record. Okay. Is it okay that everybody's recorded here?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, no
great.
problem.
Thank you.
Are
Okay.
we subdividing the groups, or are we gonna be just?
Looks like we're going to be subdividing the groups.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. I'll be facilitating one group, and then Carolina will be facilitating the other.
Mhm.
Okay. And then we'll just kind of go through our usual introductions here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, we've done the recording, and then we'll just go around and say a little bit about yourself. Who are you, where you are, if you wish, something about your political leanings, and then also whether you feel, our question for today, can you empathize with your enemy, yes or no? And just where you come down on that. And the idea is that we want to just get as much diversity in the group as possible. And that's what we'll try to do. So, all right. Maybe I'll just go around the room, and we'll start off with Edwin. And you want to give your introduction?
I'm Edwin Raj, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm in El Cerrito, which is near Berkeley, California. And I come down on the side that we can empathize with our enemies, and it's actually good to do.
Okay, great. Carolina?
My name is Karolina Kubiak. I'm calling from Poland, Central Europe. I have doubts. I don't know if we can sympathize. I would like to empathize with my enemy, but I don't know if I am able to do that. So
Okay.
my answer is I'm not sure.
Okay. Andre?
Yes, I'm Andre, and my answer to this question is yes, definitely yes.
Mm-hmm.
What else am I supposed to include in my introduction?
Sure. Yeah, give a little something.
Oh, I don't have any political affiliations because I don't trust political system at all, and that's about it.
Where are you?
Okay. Oh, where are
Pardon
you?
me?
Where?
I'm sorry. I am in Bay Area right now until the Monday, because I'm flying back to Coruña, Spain on Monday, but I'll be joining from there. But I'm California resident, actually, so I'm in the Bay Area.
Okay. David?
I'm David Hazen. I live in Eugene, Oregon. I've written 2 books. One, Love Always Wins. The other, The Work of Love. And I'm the founder of the Emerald Compassionate Action Network. And I definitely believe we can empathize with our enemies. I've done it, and it is difficult. It takes a lot of preparation, a lot of work, but I know it can be done.
Okay. Shannon?
I'm Shannon. I'm actually in Alberta, Canada. I'm liberal, if anyone cares. I think it's different for every person, that some people are more biologically capable of feeling empathy than other people, and people who have more ability to feel empathy can empathize with almost anyone, whereas other people maybe can't even empathize with their friends, or they have a harder time and have to work at it more. So that's kind of where I fall in that.
Okay, great. And I'm sorry, it says
Irina.
iPhone there. Yeah, what?
Yes, Irina.
Irina.
Irina. Okay.
Irina.
All right.
Let me get it right. Okay.
Okay. I'm Andre's wife. I'm here in Spain, in A Coruña. In my views, I think I'm pretty conservative. And I am absolutely positive that I have to empathize with my enemies. Actually, for me, it's the only way to forgive. And before I forgive, I cannot live my normal life.
Okay.
So that's about it.
Okay. All right. And Michael and Hal, I believe it is, right?
Harrison.
Harrison, I'm sorry. Okay. Michael and Harrison, thank you.
Sure. My name's Harrison. I live in South San Francisco, and I am interested in this topic because Michael and I have been talking about, he introduced me to nonviolent communication. I'm listening to the book on audio. I'm interested in this community and this subject of that we're going to discuss today. My feeling is that that we can empathize with our enemies. I've had some experience of practicing that, although imperfectly. Sometimes it's hard depending on the person and how challenging my relationship is with them. But I am inspired by examples and stories of people, just like, for example, some of the Tibetans who have been tortured by the Chinese government, and their empathy and their compassion for their torturers is sort of kind of a gold standard that I think demonstrates that we can empathize with our enemies.
Okay. Michael?
Hey, so name's Michael Merchant. And I have a background in corporate facilitations and management consulting, and I believe that there really isn't such a thing as our enemy, and so I strongly believe that breaking down enemy images is the mechanism through which we all find solutions that actually make sense. That being said, I find myself fighting people all the time and creating enemy images all the time, and resonate very deeply with the idea that it is really hard to learn to empathize when we're angry with people and frustrated with people. So I think we have to learn.
Okay. And I'm Bill Filler. I'm a retired special education teacher. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area in Northern California. Politically, as I say, I'm on the left, but it's complicated. And having the experience of being a special education teacher with very challenging students and families, I concur. It's very hard to empathize, but essentially, once you engage with people, you realize that the idea of enemy kind of breaks down, and it's really not valid. It's not a good descriptor. So that's okay. Michael.
Yeah, sorry, but I just wanted to share one thing. So Harrison and I actually had plans to meet for the first time here, or second time here. And so I just wanted to come and say hello and join you all for the introductions and say that I will be back for the next cafe. But just get a feel for what the cafe's plans are for today, and hopefully join you on future calls for the full 2 hours. Okay,
great. Thanks for checking in.
Yeah. So
was that both of you are going to be dropping out, or just one?
Both of us will drop out once we get started into the main element of the cafe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, the next part in Carolina will give basic instructions for people here if you haven't participated before, and also for people online. It's a very simple format, and it's something you can do, and we invite you, of course, to join us here in any of our empathy cafes. Okay, Carolina, would you like to do?
Yeah, I would try. So, it's kind of structured dialogue we perform here. There are 3 roles in this dialogue. There is a speaker, there is an active listener or reflective listener, and there are silent listeners. So the first person is a speaker, and speaker chooses an active listener. And it's good practice to give everybody a chance to speak, to reflect, first reflect, then speak. But you are free to choose whoever you want to choose. You can even choose back the same person if you want. But, well, the good practice is to give everybody a chance so everybody has an opportunity to reflect and then to speak. So for a lot of time, speaker speaks. For example, we choose usually 5 minutes, and speaker speaks, and active listener, try to reflect back what he is hearing. It's kind of exchange between them two. And after time is up, the active listener becomes a speaker and chooses another person to reflect what he or she says. And well, a few tips for speaker and for active listener. When you choose somebody, as I said, you can choose whoever you want to choose to reflect what you are saying. Do pause. It's important to pause as often as you can, because when you say too much information, too much thoughts, ideas, it might be hard for listener to reflect what you are saying. So give a chance to your listener to reflect what you're saying, and pause as often as you can. Monitor what your active listener says, how he or she understands what you mean. You can make corrections, use different words to express yourself. So do that. And when the time is up, when you are done, it's good to say if you feel hurt or fully hurt. We have this habit that we say, okay, I feel hurt. If you feel, of course. Active listener, please use your own words to express what you just heard from the speaker. But it's important, do not refrain from judging or asking questions or analyzing. I hope you hear me, because my connection is again unstable. Do you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your job, active listener, your job is to reflect what you hear from the speaker, but refrain from judging, analyzing, diagnosing, or even sympathizing with your speaker. You will have your time. Actually, after that, it's your turn. You will be speaking. You will have your chance to express yourself. So now it's time for the speaker to be heard, and give him this or her this chance to be well reflected. That's your job. You can ask for pausing if you feel there is too much said. You can ask for pausing and do that. Okay, what about a silent listener? Please be just present to the whole process, monitor the process, the whole steps of the process. And if I may suggest, try to observe how it changes, how your focus changes when you are an active listener and when you are just silent listener. If you produce your judgment or you just focus on reflecting, it's good to observe yourself as well. So that's probably the whole explanation. I repeat once more: the speaker chooses the active listener, they exchange information and emotions and expressions, thoughts, and then an active listener becomes a speaker and chooses another person. That's how the whole process, this whole cycle goes. Okay, I think, can we add something, anything?
No, that sounds really good.
Okay.
Okay. Now if I get Irina, is she seems to have dropped. Is that?
She apologizes. Her internet connection just
Okay.
moved off, and she's trying to reconnect right now.
Okay. I see.
So see if you can do it.
Okay. So the question is whether we want to break out into two groups or have one group. I'll throw out a suggestion is to stay to one group.
Yeah.
For right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. All right. So welcome those near and far who are watching this at any point in time. The question today before us is, can you empathize with your enemy? And so we have a lot of, fertile thought around that. Is there anyone who would like to get started today and talk to somebody? All right, no takers. All right. Well, I'll start, and just to role model the process, and then I'll talk to David. Okay, great.
Oh, what's the time limits?
Time limit is 5 minutes.
I will be keeping.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Irene just called me on the FaceTime, and she's capable of listening, and she probably will be able to talk too without having a video. Having said that, maybe we should divide, because we have right now 8 participants, I believe, including Irene.
No, the other ones will be dropping out.
Yeah.
Michael will be dropping out.
Oh, they didn't drop yet. Okay, I see.
Right.
They dropped already. Oh, they just put themselves on mute and stop the video. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
just listen in for a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, and then let's stay, because if we break out, and then Irina may have a harder time getting back in somewhere. So
yeah.
Well, I just want to say that I will control our time, and I will show you something like that.
Okay.
Do you see it properly? Because I see mirror. You see properly?
Right. Yes.
I see properly, yeah.
Okay, because I see in my screen mirror. So I will show when the time is up, 5 minutes is up, I will show this, and it will be kind of information for you.
Right.
And Bill, can I start and I'll speak to you just to model it, since we're both familiar with
absolutely. Just one more thing I wanted to say about the time is that when Carolina, it's a soft close. So if you need to finish a thought or something like that, please do so. And during the time, if for some reason we need to change the time, we can do that. Sure. So Edwin, why don't you start? I'll listen to you.
Okay. So empathizing with our enemies. In one sense, I don't see people as enemies to begin with. So, just from my experience, I know that any person that I can, if I just, connect deeply enough with them, that I'm able to sort of connect with them. So I don't really feel like I have enemies per se. So in a sense, it's, just starting with that.
Right. So you feel that the word and the definition of enemy really doesn't hold much water, that once you talk to someone who is quote unquote an enemy and you get to know them, then they're not so much of an enemy. You can disagree, but you don't see them in that kind of labeling way. Yeah,
there's people that annoy me, irritate me, I don't like too much, or at any moment in time, that I'm really pissed off with them. But as a, larger, enemy, like someone in, Israel, Palestine might just, or whatever, might just see each other as, mortal enemies. I don't really have that sense. So, because I really see that if I can see and connect with the person, that I can kind of get past that. But ideally, it's not just, maybe the question shouldn't be, it's not just can we connect with, empathize with our enemy, but can we have mutual empathy with our enemies, in the sense that we have a mutual, a mutual dialogue, not just me empathizing with someone that pisses me off. Can we bring them into an empathy circle so that it's like mutual empathy is, I think, really what we're needing.
Mm-hmm. So rather than simply just, labeling someone as an enemy, you feel that kind of label breaks down as you get to know them. But the empathy process, what's important is a sense of mutuality.
Yeah.
And that not simply that we're just kind of hanging out there, turning the other cheek, listening and taking everything, but that the other person, the quote unquote enemy, then is willing to listen to us as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, David?
Yeah?
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you very much for listening to me. Okay. Well, being a special education teacher, or retired special education teacher, and especially with the population, which was quite extreme, emotionally disturbed, I would come in, students would come in and start screaming at me, from the get-go. I remember one young woman, it was my first day, and she came in and we were introduced, and I said, "Hi, how you doing? Welcome to the class." And she just screamed. I won't do it here, so to save everybody's ears. But whatever, this is at you, and every name in the book and stuff. And at one time, it feels like an unexpected attack. I was surprised. And the other, if you do my job for a while, it was very humorous, because essentially all of the anger and stuff is so overblown that you realize that this is just a defense mechanism for a very scared person inside. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. I hear you talking about your acquiring wisdom about the effect of, I'm just going to say trauma on your students' lives, and how that you've been able to generalize from that experience. And I'll just add to this for your information. My wife is a retired special education teacher as well. So it's a very familiar story to me. I think that, well, no, that's my sharing for later.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I'll stop.
Okay. All right. You're a very lucky man. And so, but nevertheless, I do realize I had very challenging, and I never really, with a student, I never really had this problem, but there was a man who came up to our school one day and threatened a colleague of mine. And she had just gone through chemotherapy, and she was actually a long distance runner, but her, in her 50s, 60s. So if he had attacked her, with her bones and stuff, that would have been a lifelong disability for her. And I didn't know what to do. He was just kind of talking and just venting, as we say. But then he started, one of the ways, by the way, internet people, if you want to know if a person's about to attack you, is that the focus goes wide to you. When you start to see, ooh, you, then you look at as possibly the person is building up momentum to actually possibly make a physical attack. So at that point, I realized that if he touched her, I was going to slam him to the bricks. And it was, I was very, I was very conflicted. But once I made that decision, I got very calm, and he seemed to know it, and there was no physical altercation at all. I answered his questions logically, and then he went away, and that's sort of a conundrum to me. So I'll stop there.
Wow. So you've had experiences of confronting
Mhm.
someone who is very upset and being able to insert yourself in the situation in such a way that that you were able to communicate a boundary, a very strong boundary, and yet do it compassionately and calmly.
Thanks. Yeah. Uh, yeah. It was, you know, talking about a limit is excellent. And um, I hope it's compassion. I don't know. I just felt what happened that I calmed down and I focused. And that's what I communicated calmness and focus. And then it just worked out fine. I'll stop there.
Yeah, so you've identified that one of the most important ingredients
Mhm.
in resolving conflict is adopting a inner calm on your own part to suppress your own impulse to have either violent thoughts, words, or actions.
Yeah, except that I'll just not necessarily suppress, because I was ready to. Once I made the decision that I would intercede physically before I would let this woman be hurt for the rest of her life, then I sort of got clear with myself, and then that calmed down. I wasn't suppressing. I was sort of acknowledging, and that's the part that kind of puzzled me. Because once I committed myself to possibly getting physical, then I got very calm, and then what you said was communicated, and then, you know, I answered his question and he went away. It was completely. So I find that interesting in this conversation. I'll stop there now, and then I'm done.
So you're feeling some curiosity and wonderment about how this exactly happened.
Mm-hmm.
That you were able to diffuse a situation that was, you know, potentially violent.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I did it through embracing my own inner violence and looking at it and then going away. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, David. I feel heard.
Oh, good. Thank you. So it's my turn to speak,
Yes.
and I would choose Carolina.
Okay. As always, I have to remind that I may have problem with understanding, so please be merciful for me, David, because of my language skills. Okay, I'm ready.
So far this discussion has reminded me of an incident where I was attempting to conduct a planning meeting for the International Day of Peace, and some people who had heard about the meeting but had not been to any previous meetings were there, and they had an axe to grind. They wanted to focus on, yeah, go ahead.
So you recalling what I'm hearing, you recalling a meeting you were conducting. It was about some peace actions, as I understand, and there were new participants who came to this meeting, and as I understand, they didn't understand the rules, the situation. Is it correct?
They may have understood what we were trying to do, and they had a cause of their own that they wanted to, I'm going to say, redirect the focus of the entire event to their cause, which was strictly a political conflict.
Okay, so you were conducting the meeting, but suddenly those people occurred and they were trying kind of redirect the whole meeting into their own purposes, their own goals, and they were different from the prime goal of this meeting, as I understand, and it was kind of political issue.
Yes. And when I tried to bring the focus back to what we were doing, they started calling me names, accusing me of prejudice, and I was feeling quite angry. But I was also determined not to return their names with other names, to react in kind.
Okay, so you were trying to kind of rescue the whole situation and come back to the main purpose of this meeting and to kind of redirect back the whole situation. And those people start to attack you, offend you with names, and they behave kind of rudely. And you get angry with that, but you try to not react the same way they behave, as I understand.
Right. I forget how the meeting ended, but I remember feeling at the end of the meeting and for a few days, even afterwards, very angry, unresolved. And I talked to other people about it, tried to work this out, do a lot of problem solving, and I meditate. And eventually, during meditation, I realized I needed to forgive. I needed to adopt their point of view, understand why they are so upset about their issue, and why they think it is so important that everybody adopt their point of view. And that was very helpful for me.
So what I'm hearing you saying that you don't remember how the meeting ended, but you remember that you felt kind of very unsatisfied after the meeting. You feel kind of unresolved. So you felt that you didn't have a good satisfaction from the end of this meeting. And you still were angry, and you kind of couldn't find the right state of mind. So you began to meditate, and that was the way you found kind of a solution that you have to, well, I would call it empathize with your enemies. It's actually a time, but I will try to wrap up what you just said. And you will try to understand that what was the purpose, why it was important to them. And this way you try to empathize with them and understand why they behave like they behave. Is it correct?
Yes, I just want to finish
Yeah, go ahead.
anecdote with the decision I made with the help of another person, which was to simply not engage, because realizing that trying to reopen the conversation with them would only stimulate more of their anger, and that it was not the right time and place to do that.
So you think that there is, as I understand, you think that it's important what one of the participants or your friends said, that that engaging in conversation with those people who were angry, you were angry, wasn't a good thing to do, because it wasn't the state of mind that helped to empathize and understand each other. Is it correct?
Yeah, yeah. I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, so I will, I have to start time. I'm sorry. I have to choose. Maybe I choose Shannon. Shannon, can you reflect me?
Sure, I'll try.
Well, I have problem today with focusing on the topic because I am co-facilitating and I'm trying to be focused on many things, so I feel a little bit distracted. But anyway, I will try to focus on our topic. Can you reflect that?
Oh, yes. So you're having, sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to reflect that too. You are saying you're having difficulty with focusing on the actual topic of the conversation because you have to do the facilitating and you have to think about that. And it's hard to think about more than one thing going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, when I think about empathizing with enemy, I believe that this is the only way to resolve any conflict. That's for sure. As Gandhi said, make your enemy your friend. I believe in this idea. That this is one thing to believe in idea, but another thing to be able to do that. I stop there.
So you're saying that the only way to resolve conflict is to turn your enemies into your friends. So
yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, but the problem is that one thing is to believe in some ideas, in some concepts. Another idea is to be able to execute them. That's the thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're saying it's harder to execute. You have to learn to execute what you believe in, or than to just think it's true. And some people just believe in it, but they don't actually do it.
Yeah, that's what I afraid. I actually afraid that about me, about myself. I wrote in one of the posts below this on our group, Bridging Political Devices, that what about Jews empathizing with Nazi? What about Guantanamo prisoners empathizing with the interrogators, if it's possible? What about Gulag prisoners? Can they empathize with NKVD officers and their oppressors? And this example of Tibetan monk that, well, I ask myself, if I, being in such oppressive situation, if I could empathize with my enemy, especially with my oppressor, that's the question I ask myself. I stop there.
So you're actually thinking about it, you're putting it to yourself about whether you are just, believing in empathy, or whether you can actually execute it, like the example with the Tibetan monks that empathize with their oppressors, and Jews empathizing with Nazis and such. Whether you can pull off such empathy as well, and I would think, yeah.
Well, it's not exactly what I meant. I ask myself if it's possible that Jew can, if it's possible that Jew empathize with Nazi. I don't know if it's possible. We have to ask Jews about that, and so on. If any victims can empathize with their oppressors, tormentors, interrogators, guards, can they do that? Can I do that if I would be in such a situation? I don't know. I would like to be able to do what the Tibetan monks do, but I don't know if I can do that. So asking this question in a topic of our meeting, I believe it should be very personal. We should ask ourselves if we are personally able to do that. That's what I mean.
So you're wondering if people can, as the oppressed, empathize with their oppressors, and whether we, as people who believe in empathy, can live up to that example, can live up to the type of what we believe in, of if we were the oppressed, if we could empathize with our oppressors.
Yeah, but the important thing is we should ask this question personally to ourselves. That's important, that this is the kind of question that should be very personal. Yeah, I know the time is up. I know that. I just wrapping up. That's what I think about this question, that we should see the personal element in it.
So you're saying we should look within ourselves and ask ourselves whether we can be empathetic, even in the hardest situations.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I feel heard. It's your turn.
Okay, so I think all that's left is Andre. Is that your name? Would you mind?
Oh, no, thank you. Sure. I just unmuted myself. Yeah, please go ahead and I will listen to you and reflect.
Okay, this is actually a hard topic for me. I have lots of enemies in real life, personal enemies. So I wonder okay, I'll just start with, there's a difference between enemies on the political spectrum, or enemies who you disagree with about a topic, and then enemies who are actually trying to hurt you. And some of the examples, actually Bill's example was, I think, the best, where there was someone actually physically trying to hurt a friend of his. And you have to make decisions about.
Okay, let me reflect if I may.
Sure, sorry.
Okay, so you were saying that you have a problem because you have quite a few enemies. Mm-hmm. And you also say that you want to differentiate from ideological enemies versus enemies who can act aggressively or in any way hurt you by psychological or physical abuse.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think that I said before that there are biological, neurological reasons why some people are less capable of feeling empathy than other people. And that we need to distinguish between, like the problem is if you have someone that's your enemy, can you use empathy to stop them from hurting you? It's actually a question that I have. I don't know. And if you rely on their empathy back toward you to stop them from hurting you, they might actually hurt you more. So
Okay, so let me stop you here, please. So you're also saying that you're not sure whether this is neurological or biological contribution to the fact that the person can be more or less empathetic. And also you said that by forcing you to exercise empathy to an individual or individuals who may physically hurt you, may lead to more abuse from their part, because they're not going to appreciate your empathy. They're going to abuse you more, I'm interpreting, seeing your weakness in that. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
I also think some people relate to bullying like it's a form of communication for them. So when you respond to them with empathy, they get more angry. Whereas when you respond with bullying, they actually comprehend what you're doing and feel a connection with you, instead of, it's the opposite of what we would think, because we're not those kind of people.
Okay, so you're also saying that, continuing on the same notion, that empathy can kind of provoke more aggression, because people don't understand empathy, they don't appreciate, they just want to abuse it, and that provokes them to be more aggressive. So in some cases, it works better to affect those aggressive people with possibly anger or another negative kind of attacking force, which is complete opposite from empathy.
Well, I think that actually in many ways, in body language and verbal, like Bill said, he calmed down, you express to your enemies your strength. And so if you're calm, you're expressing strength, and they realize that they're on the weaker end, and they respond more positively because they understand their position in the hierarchy, you know. So if you not so much as respond with anger or retaliate, but respond with strength, then they're more likely to back down. That's a theory that I have.
Okay. I got it. I think I got it. So you also say that in order to prevail in the situation, now you were kind of leaning, I sense that you are more talking about the, I'm sorry, I'm making a mistake again, I'm trying to interpret. Let me just reflect. You're saying that the person who is in communication with you at that point can should feel strength in you in order to respect it or feel it and then become less aggressive. And strength can be manifested by you being calm and peaceful, because that's manifestation of strength indeed. And that will make them to back off. But it's outside the empathy, because containing yourself is, as I understand, is a different thing. It's not the empathy. I'm interpreting it again. I'm sorry. So please continue. I hope I understood you correctly.
Well, I just think about the strength that it just shows strength if you're calm. It makes them think, well, you must be in a position of power because you're not scared or upset. So you are expressing a kind of body language and tone of voice that makes them think, oh no, I'm in kind of in trouble because this person is stronger than me.
Okay, so you're saying that by being calm and not emotional, but maintaining peaceful state of mind and body language makes your adversary to realize that they deal with the power here, because these traits in individual manifest the power.
Right, exactly. Yes, I feel heard. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so since it's my turn, let's see. I will speak to Bill.
Listening?
Okay, so yeah, I would like to first get back to definitions, because I always do in the beginning. Enemies and empathy. The enemies as well as empathy are very wide, flexible words. They can be interpreted in so many different ways. So I will deliberately narrow the semantics of every word, especially the enemy. The enemy I will deliberately define in little primitive ways. So I will say it's opposite from friend, as Gandhi suggested, as a matter of fact. You mentioned that. So, and Gandhi also suggested, as I heard from Shannon, that you are trying to make friend out of your enemy. And I also am not going to include political enemies or people who have opposite view or different paradigm from you or what you stand on. You want to reflect that?
Well, you're trying to, I'm not sure I got completely in the weeds with you, but you're trying to narrow the idea of and define empathy and then the enemies. And you're throwing out some of the various definitions of enemy. And so you're trying to narrow it. So I didn't quite get exactly what your narrow definitions are. So maybe I need to listen to that again.
Let me elaborate a little bit. So
Sure.
I want to use enemy as an antonym for friend.
Okay.
And okay, so and I'll continue. So I want to look at enemy, or for example, as someone who causes you pain. Psychological or physical does not matter. In other words, it's a person who just a minute ago, as a matter of fact, was your friend. By his action, he becomes your enemy because he causes you discomfort. It causes you pain or agitation or what have you. And at that moment, the person, either he was your friend or was not, is irrelevant. He's your enemy at that moment. He causes you discomfort or pain. And to follow up on what you do with this, how you can make him friend back, there is methodology, as a matter of fact. My favorite methodology is what Jesus Christ told to his disciples, how to, first of all, how to treat the situation and how to draw the line when your empathy should stop. As a matter of fact, he's very concrete about it. He says that when your brother or your friend becomes your enemy or creates adversity for you, you should tell him about it. You should depict to him that he is sinning against you. And if he listens to you, then you gain your friend back because he understood you and he agreed with you. However, if he doesn't listen to you, he disagrees with your interpretation of his action, then Christ suggests that you call 2 or more people to make your opinion objective, and therefore there's a better chance for him to change his opinion.
Okay.
And if he doesn't listen to this group of people, then the third level is to tell it to the church. I'm not going to discuss what church is in this context, it's complicated, but I stop with that. And if he doesn't listen to church, then you should treat him as a tax collector or the pagan, the idol worshiper. I stop.
Okay. So you defined enemy as someone who causes you physical and or emotional pain, and it could be a friend. So it's essentially it's in the moment what a person is doing, and then what you feel is the proper response. With Christ talked about is to try to get first of all talk to the person, and then bring in other people and then even a wider social community. So more objectivity and community and shared values, social values, pro-social values can be shared, and hopefully the issue can be resolved.
Correct, thank you. But I want to continue a little bit, if I may. So that borderline that is being depicted, that after these three phases, thank you, after these three phases you've been through, and you came to the point, the realization that there's no hope here, what does it mean to treat this person as a tax collector or as an idol worshiper?
So what you're saying is that if the person does not respond to any of these entreaties from the social group, then they're defined as the other, as a pagan or as a tax collector, and then that leaves some questions as to, well, what do you do then?
Well, actually, there's an answer for that, and I'm sorry, I have to
quickly.
take a little more time because I want to finish. I want to be heard. If I may.
Sure,
so
just quickly.
The thing is that, it doesn't mean that you have to stop your empathy. What it means that at this point, there's no more usefulness in communicating with this person. You have to withdraw from communication with such person. But it doesn't mean that you have to cut him off. And empathy in that case would be of different sort. It's not going to be co-emoting with this person. It's going to be love for him, so you're praying for him and hoping that he will change.
So you want to make the strong distinction that just because you've stopped communicating, it does not mean you've stopped empathizing.
Correct.
So it might be, good to stop communicating, but you're still thinking of ways to create community.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. I'll talk to Shannon.
Hi. Okay.
Hey, Shannon. So, really interesting. First of all, when we talk about what is an enemy, I think we talked about different types of enemy, but also whenever I say something about empathy, like people always bring up like the worst case scenario. It's like, how many people have been tortured here? And it's like, and then had to, and it's true. I think it's worth talking about. But on the other hand, we always, sometimes I think there's an over-reliance to take the extreme position. A man's coming with you with a samurai sword. What do you say? And, you say, I don't know, get out of here. I don't know. So I'll stop there.
So you're saying that people, when you take the extreme position, then it's harder to have dialogue about, more normal cases of where you'd need to utilize empathy to.
Right. Yeah, and I feel that people are sort of like a mixed bag. And so just as you are annoyed or angered by one aspect of a person's personality, you may be supported and and made happy by another aspect of the person. So we're not homogeneous.
So you're saying everybody say is a mixed bag. So there's things about them that are good and things that are bad, and it's not just one or the other. That kind of what you mean.
Yeah, and then what I will say about my experience with my students and their family, even though they physically attack me and things like that, if you stay with them and you say you're not going to leave them and that you're going to be there with them every step of the way, you turn an enemy into a friend.
So if you, even if people are giving you a hard time, if you tell them you're going to be there for them and stick with them and not leave them, then they soften and become your friend.
Yeah, and I had one very extreme situation. A student was a danger to themselves or others. We had to do a restraint. The student was trying to take me out. You know, literally, they're afraid, and so I was watching him, kind of like scratching my hand, and then doing all of this, and then finally, he was threatening to kill me. And then he said, well, now I'm going to kill myself. And then I knew I got him. And I said, and I'd be sad. I would miss you. And so that changed my enemy into my friend. And then he calmed down, and then we could resolve the situation in safety.
So you had a student that was physically trying to attack you, and then he turned and he said he was going to kill you, but then he turned and said he'd kill himself instead. And then that opened a doorway for you to express your empathy toward him and tell him you'd be sad if he did. And then you developed a bond with him because of that.
Yeah. Yes. And I just, and then that was a wonderful lesson for me, that behind all this hate is just fear. And that if you address the fear, the hate goes away.
And so you learned that under the hate was fear, and then once you address the fear, then the hate goes away. I feel like I'm just repeating what you just said, but
it's okay. That's okay. That's fine. Thank you, Shannon. I feel very heard.
Thank you. I'll talk to Carolina. If I'm getting
okay, I'm listening.
Let me know. I had notes here. I was just listening to everyone's responses. Well, one thing when I first
So what I'm
heard
hearing you looking at your notice.
Yes, I forget things. So when I first heard about this topic, my first question was about the word empathy, actually. What we do here is kind of learning to have dialogue where everyone is listening to each other, which I think is very much in need in our society, because I feel like people don't just listen to each other.
Can I reflect that?
Mm-hmm.
So you look into your notes, and you recall the first thing you thought about this topic, and you were thinking about empathy, the term of empathy, and you refer to this dialogue we perform here, we try to establish here, as where everybody where we try to listen to each other carefully, and this is something that there is a lack of it in our society, as I understand.
Yes, that's right. So I have tried this technique with a couple people who have actually done things that have hurt me. And what I find is that there's usually, and I've watched other people go through this kind of dialogue as well, and the person who has the empathy talks to the other person, and the other person doesn't necessarily respond with empathy all the time. Bill gave an example where that worked, but I haven't seen that work consistent.
Let me reflect. So you were watching some, as I understand, recording or such empathy dialogue cases, and you were trying to do the same with people with whom you are in personal relation and those people hurt you in some ways, and you try to talk to them in this form of dialogue, and it seems to you that it doesn't really work when one person try to empathize with the other person, but the other person doesn't do the same. That's your experience, and you, until now, you didn't see the kind of good effect of it, as I understand. Is it correct?
Right.
Okay.
So I would wonder if you have a real enemy who just has decided that you're evil. I mean, there's just nothing about you that's good, and they've determined you're evil. If there's a way, and how you could use empathy to get them to see you as a not evil person.
Okay, so you particularly feel hurt by being seen as an evil, pure evil by other people with who I suppose are close to you, and you try to talk to them with empathy, and it still doesn't work. They still perceive you as evil, and you are curious, if I understand you correctly, if anybody has such experience where it work, because it's very painful for you to feel, to be perceived as an evil.
Yes, yes. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Oh, actually time is up. That very moment. Okay. Well, I will try to talk to Edwin.
Mm-hmm. Listening.
I feel touched by what Shannon is saying, because it's very personal, what she's saying, and from the very beginning, what she says is very personal, and it's kind of well, I feel touched by that.
Yeah,
okay?
you're feeling very touched by what Shannon's saying because there's a real personal aspect to it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I also have such an experience, personal experience. And in that point, I kind of sympathize with her because I have the first time experience of being perceived as an evil. And I know that one person see me very wrongly, and if some of my friends would hear what this person says about me, they would think that it's about whom it is. It's not about me, about whom. It's kind of, so I have also this good feeling that other people know that I'm not that evil.
Yeah, so you really have a similar situation as Shannon was describing, that someone sees you as sort of evil or just, terrible person. And if other people were to hear that, they just wouldn't understand it because they see you completely differently. So maybe you're feels good to know you're not the only one. Shannon has that experience too.
And it's good to have at least one person in your life who knows that you are not that bad, that you are actually different from this image of being evil. That's important, to have at least one person who believes in you. That's important.
Yes, you just see the importance of having someone who believes in you and sees the positive sides of you. And yeah.
And that's actually the reason why I doubt so much about my ability to empathize with my enemy. well, that's my wish, that's my will, that's my intention to empathize with my enemy, actually the only enemy I have, because I don't perceive any political, ideological, as Andrié call them, ideological enemies. I don't perceive those people as my enemies. We are just different. But I don't see even Polish fascists or Nazi. I am against them. I am Antifa, but I don't perceive them as an enemy. However, this one person, I can manage my relation with this person, and I have problem with empathizing.
Mm-hmm. So there's one person that you really have difficulty empathizing with, and they're sort of like a personal enemy, and it's just difficult to empathize with them at a personal level. And you generally don't have enemies, like even in the political world, you know, the fascists, and you don't even see, you just think you have different political views, and you don't see them as enemies, even though you're Antifa. So it's really this personal difficulty with especially one person.
But I also have this kind of experience that, well, I was thinking what condition I have to get the condition that let me empathize. And there were moments in my life that I actually feel that I can empathize. I understand this person. I understand the problem this person has. I can explain to myself why this person treat me like that. But if I feel more self-independent, more strong in my identity, in who I am, and I feel independent in the relation with this person, it's easier for me to empathize with this person. But when I feel more a victim, more dependent, it completely kind of almost completely cut off my ability to empathize. Well, after some emotional tension, I always, okay, I understand why it happened, but I can't do during the situation. Okay, that's the problem. Well, that's the thing I have to achieve, to empathize during the moment of tension. And when I feel victim, when I feel dependent, I have problem with empathizing. So I can't do what Chinese monk, what Tibetan monk did. I'm not able to do that. Mm-hmm. I hope I will be, but right now it's kind of difficult.
Okay, so in the moment when you're with someone who you're in the moment, you have difficulty empathizing with someone, sort of in the emotional moment. If you have some distance from the person, you're able to do it better, be able to empathize, understand more. Sometimes you can understand them, especially if you, like the next day, you kind of think about it and you can kind of get an understanding of where they're coming from and empathize with them. So, but in the moment, there's that struggle, you know.
Well, I have to make a little correction. Well, I believe that I know that time is up. I know. I need to make a little correction. I believe that the identity of victim has to feel independent, kind of feel strong identity that is independent from this relation with the oppressor. That's
I didn't reflect that part. It's if you feel like you're the victim and you're really intertwined with the person, you don't have like a separation, that's what kind of keeps you empathizing.
Yeah, so the thing is, I believe the thing is to build your own identity independent from this relation. It doesn't mean you have to end this relation, but your identity has to be independent from this relation.
Mhm.
That's what I believe.
Yeah, so the importance of your independent identity. So,
Yeah.
okay, then
Thank you.
I'll speak to Andre.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay. So the first part I wanted to made some notes here was that I think that a grounding, like a first step towards empathizing with anyone, is to have sort of a starting point of wanting to build a culture of empathy. That's sort of like, with that sort of is the intention in life, that it's a good grounding to deal with all these issues. So like, we want a culture of empathy, and then, how do we move towards that intention? And a culture of empathy is like really everyone listening to everyone else. It's a mutuality. It's not like, hey, yeah, so we just reflect that.
Okay, so you think that the most important incentive and a baseline for this process is the process itself, basically, in order to build this common empathy. People just have to, everybody has to learn how to emphasize, how to listen, how to, the whole idea should be within itself an incentive for this process.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I want to build a culture of empathy. So that's my starting point. Like, here we are, a group of people in the world. I want this empathic society, which means everybody empathizes with everyone else. The whole level of the whole cultural empathy, I want it to be raised. And so that's sort of my starting intention.
Okay, so you're saying that your starting point and intention is to build that culture. So, so it grows. It's like it spreads out, spreads around. So more people are getting involved in this process and this culture, and you strongly believe that this is basically your goal and purpose.
And it's not an individualistic thing, like, oh, me as an individual are going to empathize with my enemy. It's like, we need a mutual empathy, right? The goal is not for me to be this independent Buddha or something who isn't, fucking enlightened. It's like, I hate that idea that you're this individual and you're supposed to be enlightened in this world. It's like, no, we need a culture where everybody is relating in an empathic way,
Okay, so you think that the idea of enlightenment, even though it may be appealing to a lot of people, it's not what you're pursuing. You're pursuing this enlightenment, as I understood, you understand, is individualistic. It's me who's getting enlightened. It's not everyone. It's not being spread. It's my personal cocoon of enlightenment. I'm getting enlightened, right. But I don't care about anything else, because indeed enlightenment actually excludes everything, including emotions.
Yeah.
All of enlightenment is just nothingness, nirvana.
So it's the mutuality versus individuality.
It's a synergy of empathy among.
I didn't say synergy. I would say empathy is an integrative process. It's like, we integrate here in this dialogue, we're only doing 2 hours, but if we spent, 8, 10, 20 hours, we slowly sort of integrate our different understandings and views. So the empathy is this ongoing, integrative, problem solving, relationship building process. So having that is sort of it needs to have that as the starting point, I think is important to have that. So it's not you as an individual going out and empathizing with all your enemies. It's like, hey, maybe I will empathize with you as an enemy to start with, because the intention is to bring you into a mutual empathic relationship.
Okay, so you believe that it's not supposed to be just my individual being good person or an empathetic person. You want to spread that virus of empathy on other people, on your enemies. You want them to get infected with empathy and produce the same back, and that's gonna create this connectivity or interactive.
This culture of empathy. But I can start empathizing with people to model how to do it. right? I am modeling it to show you. It's like the means are the end. So we don't like, so it's the means are the end. So we have to sort of model the listening and the dialogue, and the empathy to bring people into this mutuality. So
yeah. So you want basically produce an example of that. You want to be starting point, initiator to build up this culture.
Yeah, I got a lot more to say, but my time is up. I feel heard.
Okay. I will use Carolina.
Well, with pleasure, but can you give a chance to David, because
I'm sorry.
he
David
wrote in chat.
But dropped out from it, and I didn't realize that he's back. Okay, David, I'll choose you as my listener. But I want to reflect a little bit on, not reflect, to kind of answer or follow up on what was Carolina saying. That
I'm sorry to interrupt you, David. Are you hearing us? Hello, David.
You probably unmuted.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was muted.
Okay. So my time starts now. Anyways, I was going to follow up on what Carolina was saying about how difficult it is to how difficult it is to emphasize at the moment of adversity. Moment. Indeed, it's very difficult. I personally know very, very, very few people who can maintain peace and cool when they are being attacked. It's very difficult, indeed.
Okay.
However, go ahead.
Yeah. You're just saying that in the present moment, it's very challenging to respond empathetically.
Okay. Yes, and actually, I personally know several examples of very dramatic cases when a person was experiencing empathy in very extraordinary situations and to surprise to himself. What I referring to as this particular episode, in 1953, that was a year when Joseph Stalin has died. And when it happened, millions of people celebrated his death. Because, as very well known, he was a monster. He was a person who was responsible for deaths of millions of people, tens of millions of people, innocent people. He destroyed so many families. He created incredible atrocities in Soviet Union, former Russian Empire. So the man...
Let to reflect. Let to reflect.
Well, you were starting to tell me a story of somebody who had extraordinary empathy in a situation that was very surprising because of the amount of evil presented by this particular person, Stalin.
Yes, thank you. So what he describes as his experience that was very, very unexpected for himself is that he was part of that joy. Naturally, he was rejoicing. And then he had kind of vision. What he saw in this vision, he saw what kind of torment Joseph Stalin is experiencing now that he is exposed to the ultimate truth after his physical death. And he sees all those millions of people whom he caused that terrible grief and pain.
Yes. So you're saying that this person in your mind realized that Stalin, who caused so much suffering, would ultimately realize the results of his actions and would feel that torment, that inner, the grief.
Yes. And
Yeah.
when he kind of co-experienced, so to speak, what Stalin is experiencing for eternity. Now, that man was an Orthodox priest, so he obviously believes in life after death, and that man, when he dies, he takes everything that he is during this life with him. And when he felt a bit of that torment, his reaction was he ran into the church and he prostrated himself on the ground and started crying and praying to God, because the impression of this torment that this evil monster is going through was unbearable for him. That was act of empathy that he did not produce in himself. It was revealed to him. And the most important ingredient in that experience was, according to his words, that he realized that regardless how terrible the monster and your enemy can be, each man is created in image and likeness of God. So the very nature of every man is image of God, and it's a treasure that suffers and perishes when he ends his life with evil within himself. So the way to, I know, Tom, as you do, that the key for empathy is not to forget that every man, regardless how evil he may look to you, how you perceive it, indeed he is objectively very evil, he is still a creation of God, and he is a replica of God that perishes because he does not withdraws himself from evil actions.
So if I might paraphrase, what I heard is that you, through this story of this other man's revelation, realized that we are all connected, we are all the same, we all suffer the same.
No, we're not the same. I'm sorry, I have to interfere. We're all unique, different, unrepeatable, and free. We're not the same. We are the same in terms of how we created. What are we in general? Because initially we created in the image and likeness of God himself, who created us. He created us, every individual, being individual and unique and free and unrepeatable, but in his image and likeness. Image remains, likeness was lost.
So maybe putting it in a different way, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the evil person, that we can have a experience of the amount of trauma and grief that particular person has experienced in their life. Does that reflect what you're trying to say?
No, it does not. It's
okay.
very incorrect, because he was not empathizing for grief of Stalin's personal experience during this life. He was emphasizing suffering, kind of, what terrible torture this individual, this monster, is going through after his body ceased to exist. In other words, his personality, his ego, his soul, if you will, experiencing. He was empathizing to his state after physical death. Because again, I mentioned that this man was Orthodox priest, and he obviously believed, and believes right now, if he's still alive, that life after death and existence of individual does not cease with the physical death. And he was tormented by himself by empathizing with these sensations that he saw Stalin goes through.
Okay, let's have the reflection and then we can move.
Yeah, I now understand that this man was experiencing grief for the afterlife consequences of this person's actions.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now you understood.
Yeah. Good.
David, your turn to talk.
Oh, gee. Wow. Well, I'll select you, Bill.
All right.
And this has really been a great, stimulating discussion. And I want to reflect on a couple of points. One is I recently saw my dog in an interaction with a smaller dog that was very aggressive and actually attacked my dog on the side of the face, hit him with his jaw, didn't draw any blood or bite him, but he hit him. My dog did not move, did not react, and remained friendly towards this little dog. And I was so impressed, and I thought, this is the essence of nonviolence. This is the essence of what it means to have perhaps empathy with another dog. Understanding, hey, this little dog, he thinks I'm a big dog and I'm dangerous, so he's going to attack me. All right, big deal. And I also want to reflect on, well, I'll stop there.
Okay, sure. So you're talking about an experience you had with your dog, empathy in the animal world, where your dog was out. It's a bigger dog. A little dog came up and started to act aggressively, not harming him, but definitely, backed him on the jaw, hit him with the jaw with his head. And then your dog stayed calm. And so you saw that how your dog was not feeling threatened and stayed friendly.
Yeah. And so the further reflection on that is that I believe that developing empathy is a spiritual discipline in which at some point we decide for ourselves that we cannot be destroyed by anybody else's words, actions, or even thoughts, that we're indestructible. In other words, we have a soul and that's independent of what other people do.
So you are saying that that essentially that this idea of empathy is sort of an internally defined and driven thing, not dependent upon other people. And so what other people do, it doesn't necessarily affect how you have to act towards them. In other words, you don't have to let their actions define how the interaction will be. You have a choice. In history, I believe it's Cicero who said, Nero can kill me, but he can't hurt me.
Yes. And the other thought I wanted to put out is that I don't believe empathy in the moment is required or is even the most, the best thing that one can do. When I was watching my martial arts instructor talk to my son about the first rule of martial arts, I was totally impressed when he said, the first rule is run. Run away. Do not defend yourself. Do not counterattack until you have to. But the first rule is to run away. And I thought about that a lot. And I think that we need to understand the practicality of staying out of harm's way, of being able to step aside when the samurai has his sword raised,
Right.
to allow them, the enemy, well, it's like a keto, to allow them to rush forward, but not push back, and allow them to experience the consequences of their rushing when you're not there, in a way.
So you're talking about that sometimes people feel that they need immediate gratification, instant gratification. So the model, which you feel is wrong, is presented where somebody comes up with you with a fist or a semi-sword, and then you have to, get them into dialogue and things like that. What you're saying is that that's not necessarily the case, and that you can set limits, you can run away, as the martial artist said, and only engage when it's really absolutely necessary for your health and safety.
Yeah, and I see the time card, and I just want to make one more additional.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it? Oh, we need to be. I think someone else has said this, that I've lost it, but to be convicted of our own strength, to be certain that our ability to be connected with this other person is real. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about that the real security and empathy comes from a deep belief in being connected with this other person, and I assume all other people, and and the world, and from that sort of self-confidence comes correct decision making as to what to do in the moment.
Yeah, and it's always in the moment. You can't plan ahead. So I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. All right, we'll talk to Shannon. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Do we have time? Do we have time to make
whatever
a round?
people want to do?
I think we do. We have 20 minutes left, is what I see.
Okay.
Right, and then we have a debrief. Okay. I just want to reflect what David said, and I think that that's very important. As a special ed teacher, what you had to set limits on students, but sometimes they would just be oppositional. And so then I was a big advocate, what I called the deferred consequence. And what that meant is that rather than getting into a power struggle in the moment, you would say, okay, this is what you're choosing to do. Remember, we don't categorize. We didn't say you're bad or you're a bad person or anything like that. We just said, you're choosing to basically turn over the chair or do whatever right now. That's not okay. People don't feel safe. So we need you to stop. We give you a few alternatives. You don't do that. Well, if you do that, then there'll be a consequence down the way. And that takes you out of the immediate power struggle and lets you deal with things, as David said, at a better time.
So you're, you say, reflecting about what David said, and about, do we really have to do empathy at the particular moment when there's an immediate issue? And as a special ed teacher, you would use deferred consequences and set limits. And so if they did something wrong, or I hate to say the word wrong, because to them maybe not, but if they did something you don't want them to do, or that could possibly upset others or hurt others, you would tell them, okay, well, in the future, you're going to have consequences for this, just so you know. And that takes it out of the heat of the moment.
Okay, sorry. Jesus, sorry. God. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So they have time to think about it and calm down a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I guess I'll pick Edwin. I think
Okay,
he's
listening.
asleep, actually. I don't know why. Every time it comes around to me, I forget everything I was thinking to begin with.
So it's like when it comes around to you, it's like you forget what you were thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember. Thanks to Carolina for making me feel less alone in the world, that other people have similar kinds of issues going on. And okay, I'll stop there. I mean,
Yeah, so you're feeling some gratitude to Carolina for sharing her story, that she had the same experience. So you're feeling like you're not so alone, feeling some connection.
yeah. And also, what you said really resonated with me about, maybe I can't get this. There's tends to be kind of a group of people that have issues with me, and they collude with each other or whatever about me. But maybe I can't get them to see that I'm just a normal human being with both strengths and weaknesses and stuff. But I can identify with generally building a culture of empathy where there are more empathetic people. Maybe it's not every single person on the planet, but and that people in general learn how to communicate better and relate to each other better. So you really helped me with that.
Okay, you felt that it contributed to you just to hear about that culture of empathy and how you can connect with people. But there is this group that you have some struggle with. They kind of almost like collude to have you as an enemy, and maybe there's some difficulty there in terms of really connecting with them.
Yeah. So what you said about coming from a stance of building a culture of empathy, it depersonalizes it a little bit so that you can interact with them with a higher vision of maybe developing empathy as a culture instead of being so much about, why do you hate me? Maybe winning them over in that way toward empathy rather than having to win them over to me, which they are oppositional to. So
yeah, so having that that vision of a culture of empathy sort of gives you some space, or depersonalizes it, the relationship from, oh, why do you hate me? And it's like making it so personal, and so it gives a bit more space, a feeling of having that vision.
Right. So that's it. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. Wow. Okay. It's about the time. How are you with time?
Yeah.
Debrief or?
Yeah, this is about the time we take the last 15 minutes to basically